We're going to show you the latest rules and mechanics for Tribal 2nd Edition, our skirmish combat game. We'll play one turn and show you how activation works, the mechanics of our card-based combat system, and the importance of honour for the players. At the start of the turn, both players shuffle their entire deck of cards to be played that turn. At the beginning of a turn, each player draws a face-up card from their draw pile. The player with the highest value card has the turn initiative and can choose either to activate the first unit in the turn or force their opponent to do so. Varak draws a king of spades and Halfdan a 9 of hearts. Varak wins and decides to go first. Each player then draws a number of additional face-down cards until they have a total of 1 card for each of their units remaining on the table. Normally we'd hide these activation cards from each other, but for this video we'll play them face up so you can see what we're doing. Each player then picks up the cards and assigns 1 to each unit by placing it face down nearby on the table. These are the unit's activation cards. Combat. Varak the Cruel activates and charges at a sprint against Halfdan's warriors. He is armed with a long weapon, while the warriors are all armed with short swords and axes. Varak has the throwing weapon skill, and as he charges he flips a card from the draw deck. A 2 of clubs. One of Halfdan's warriors falls pierced through the throat by Varak's javelin. Both players now draw their starting combat hand. Varak's activation card was a king of spades, so this becomes his first attack card in this combat hand. He draws 4 more cards as Varak is unwounded and has 5 wounds remaining. Varak's combat hand is therefore 5 attack cards. Halfdan would normally have a combat hand of 4, 1 for each of his remaining warriors. He draws 3 cards and adds his unused activation card for a total of 4 attack cards. However, because Varak sprinted, he made a double move. Halfdan draws a 5th card. Exchange 1. Because Varak charged into combat, he will start with the advantage in the first exchange. Halfdan's warriors must therefore play the first card. Thinking to save his joker for a later exchange, Halfdan plays his Queen of Hearts, which has a value of 12. Varak could reply with his King of Spades, but decides to let Halfdan take the first exchange since, when losing against a heart, Varak will not suffer a wound. He therefore strengthens his hand by playing his lowest card, the 2 of Hearts. Halfdan wins the exchange with the Queen. In the next exchange he can change the suit of his own card using the Heart feint ability Jab. Exchange 2. Since Halfdan now has the advantage, Varak must play first. Thinking that Halfdan may have already played his best attack card, Varak plays his King of Spades with a smile. Varak's grin fades somewhat when Halfdan plays his joker and, then using the Heart feint ability gained from the first exchange, promptly changes its suit to a club. Both players gain +1 to the value of their strike cards due to the preferred weapon bonus, Halfdan's short weapon to his clubs, and Varak's long weapon bonus to his spades. Final totals are Halfdan 16, Varak 14. Halfdan wins the exchange again and, struck by a lucky blow, poor old Varak takes a wound. Exchange 3. Sweating a little, Varak must play first again. He plays his Jack of Hearts. Surely Halfdan can't have any more high cards, can he? At last luck smiles on him as Halfdan ditches his 8 of Hearts. Victory to Varak. After winning with a jab, the next exchange he'll be able to change the suit of his own card. Each player has only now 2 cards remaining. Exchange 4. Halfdan must now play first. Looking at his remaining attack cards, he decides to play the 9 of spades in the hope of landing a hit. Varak cunningly replies with his 8 of diamonds. Why? Firstly, he changes his card's suit to a spade using the Heart feint ability from his victory in the previous exchange. The +1 preferred weapon bonus added from his long weapon when playing a spade brings the total to 8 + 1 is 9, matching Halfdan's 9. A draw? Unfortunately for Halfdan, no. A unit armed with long weapons facing a unit armed with short will always win a drawn exchange. Halfdan loses again, and 1 more of his warriors bites the dust. Exchange 5. It is the final exchange of the combat round. Halfdan must play first and, having no choice, plays his 9 of Hearts and crosses his fingers. Varak places 10 of clubs and wins 10-9. Yet another warrior dies impaled on Varak's spear. The end of the combat round. Both players now compare the number of exchanges they won in the combat round. Varak's 3 to Halfdan's 2 mean that Varak the Cruel is the overall victor of the melee. Halfdan's remaining 2 warriors must now retreat up to 1 long card edge away from the gloating Varak. Neither can end any closer than 1 short card edge to the hero. Varak, bloodied, has lost 1 wound in the combat, but as he was the victor, he may take 1 honour point from the central supply and add it to his own pool. Open fire, ranged attack. Halfdan's javelin unit activates and throws their javelins at Varak's warriors. When making a ranged attack from a marksman unit, the player draws and plays a single random attack card from their draw deck. The enemy unit must then play their activation card in response. The values of both cards are then compared. Halfdan draws from his deck and draws an ace of clubs. Varak's warriors suffer a single casualty to missile fire. More importantly, they've gone to ground to protect themselves from the javelins and lose their activation card. They can do nothing more for this turn. Double time it. Varak decides to move his spear unit up the hill. They must capture the rune stones as they are his objective for the game. Normally units would find hills difficult terrain to move up, but we think the steps would make things easier, so the Vikings are able to fly up the hill. Showdown. There is only 1 warrior unit left to activate this turn. Halfdan, sworn to vengeance on Varak the Cruel, who now stands before him. Showing his Joker card to activate, he charges into combat with Varak. Halfdan draws another 4 cards as he has 5 wounds. Varak only gets 4 cards as he has only 4 wounds left, and Halfdan did not have to sprint to meet him. Varak must play first. He plays the 7 spades. Halfdan responds with the 8 of clubs, beating him, and Varak takes a wound. Varak must then play first, having lost the last exchange, and puts down his 10 of diamonds. He is holding on to his Joker. Halfdan decides to play the 3 of hearts. Varak wins the round and can change his next card suit. Halfdan has been waiting for this, the killer blow, and he throws down his black Joker, but Varak responds with his own. When 2 Jokers are played in a single exchange, this is a rare and terrible event. Each unit and hero on the battlefield suffers a casualty or takes a wound. Varak wins the exchange. Holding a long weapon means he wins a draw. Halfdan must play first and plays his 6 of hearts. Varak can only respond with a 4 of hearts. Halfdan wins the second exchange of the combat and now holds the advantage. Varak has no cards left, so he must play panicked. He draws a card randomly from his play deck and hopes that the random card will beat his opponent's. This random card may never inflict an injury on the opponent, even if it happens to be a black card, but it can still win an exchange. Varak draws a Jack of Clubs, a decent card, but Halfdan is able to pay his King of Clubs as his final card, dealing another wound to Varak and winning the final exchange. Halfdan won 3 exchanges to Varak's 2. This means he has won the combat. He gains an honour token. Varak, gravely wounded with only 1 wound remaining, retreats back down the beach. The turn is over. Decisions are to be made at the following turns.